Ryan on now. I think it's audio. Okay. So welcome. This is the second in the series of our Founder Essentials Masterclass 2.0. So the second episode, and we're thrilled today. We have Susy Martins with us, and just to give you a little bit about Susy's wonderful and rich background, she's an international business executive and executive coach, having worked and led teams in over 20 countries across North America, Europe, South America, and Asia. She's as an experienced chief people officer and operations executive, Susy has experience in both rapidly scaling and right-sizing organizations, coaching at all levels of leadership, and hands-on leadership experience across multiple functional areas. She has spearheaded multiple transformation and automation projects, as well as global expansions of teams. She's also developed top-rated onboarding programs, HR operating models and strategies, and arranged multi-million-dollar budgets and thousands of employees for tech unicorns, including Clearco and ApplyBoard, and as well as General Electric, 3M, Manulife, John Hancock, and Alliance Partners. And Susy has an MBA from the Ivy School of Business at Western, and she's also attained several coaching designations, including the Harvard Coaching Strategy Certificate and a Neuro Coaching ICC designation. And she's also been recognized, of course, as a woman of influence. And we were saying she speaks English, Spanish, Portuguese, and French, and is a proud champion of diversity and a passionate community builder. We are really fortunate to have Susy with us, and I can tell you that we did a little run through her presentation, and I know we are all going to take a lot away from this. So Susy, I will hand it over to you, and we look forward to your insights today.
Thanks, Tara, for that really kind intro. And I'm a Sandpiper fan, so I am very excited to be here. This is an amazing organization, and yeah, happy to spend some time today. So I'm just firing up here. So let's see the success. Can everybody see my screen? We have everything. So yeah, today we're talking about doing less with less. So this is a presentation I've done one other time this year where I talked with a group of HR tech, heads of HR for the tech sector, kind of in the Toronto area. And it's very timely, and I feel like it's a great discussion still. You know what I mean? You look at the whole year, like this is still a big topic in terms of like, what do you do with like where we are with the market and with so many things to do in scaling organizations. And you've heard about my background, so I won't take you through it again, but it's in the deck if you need it later. And scanning that will take you to my LinkedIn. That's my tech contribution. So, and in terms of the agenda, so I will talk about the main topic, and then I've also snuck in an additional topic in terms of an industry feature, really focusing on engagement surveys. So usually the fall is engagement survey time frame for most companies. So I thought it'd be great to talk to you about like a little bit of what's going on and just some things to think about. So let's go through in terms of the current landscape, kind of like the end of last year and still going through this year, right? So the left-hand side is, where we were for the last kind of 3 years before that, this kind of growth at all costs market, everybody just growing and just go, 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 go. And of course, we've shifted now to this kind of other uglier picture of really cost control, net income focus, right? Really bottom line, right? So a complete mind shift in terms of where we are in the market. And, this is focused on HR and kind of like, what you'd see from some of the leaders in HR publishing, what are the top trends for this year? What do you need to do, right? Like this is just one page just for HR, like let alone all the other areas in your organization. You can look at this, there's like, what is this? Like 22, 31 different items here and more, right? I missed the 7 at the top. So like 40 plus, just on one page of things you should focus on, and you end up feeling like this. Yep, all of those make sense, but what the heck do I focus on, right? Like I want to get everything done. I'm responsible. I want this business to go. All of these things are important. And yeah, you do start to sweat it and look like this little person here. And this is some of the other stuff that I hear when I talk to, people who are trying to scale businesses. And, it's like, there's too many goals. They're too ambitious, right? I feel really burnt out. And there's a lot of FOMO out there too. Like, I feel like there's also, you can get like spun around in terms of just, all the new trends, like, what are we doing in AI right now? Right? Like, how are we handling that in cybersecurity? Like, in all, crypto, when these things came out, like NFTs, like people, or NFTs, they want to get involved, they want to learn about them, etc. So that creates even more work, right? Because now you're spiraling over the newest trends. And of course, the fear of failure. So, people want to do a good job, right? And all of this is going on and influencing them. And I debated back and forth, and Tara and I talked about it, and like, is this still a good example, right, in terms of what's going on? And, this is really the one visual, and I know it's really high tech to think about, what do you, like, how can you manage to like a really tighter mandate in this time with all of this going around in your head, right? And I use this example, and I think it's even more prominent right now, especially what's going on, it makes it really clear. Like, if your house was burning down, what would you do? Right. And this is a question we should ask ourselves, right? And when we run businesses and how we're managing our time, if your house is burning down, it's so clear, you would take care of the people and the animals. That's it. All the other, priorities you used to have, and all of the spinning around that you saw, with him, that's gone. Like, you just got really clear on what you're doing. Right. And, I think this happens a lot too, when we transition jobs, is that it becomes so clear. I'm working 24 hours a day in my job, and I'm moving all these different mandates. But when I leave to go transition to the next job, it becomes really clear, like, what, there's 4 really important things in this job, right? So I take this away from this presentation, that like, really, like, do this test for yourself. Like, if the house is burning down, like, am I redecorating the kitchen? Does that make sense? Right? Like, am I doing what's important? So with that, like, I know we have a smaller group here, and like, we may be able to do this just together, or we may want to break out into just a couple groups, even might be good, to 2 smaller groups, depending on how many are online. But I think it's good just to get the juices flowing before we kind of go through some of the recommendations, just to break out and just think about, like, what are your current workload challenges, and how are you prioritizing them? And just talk about how you're managing them. Like, I think I did this previously, and we almost couldn't stop the time because people wanted to keep on talking about it, right? And talking it with other people. So I guess, Britt, you are our Zoom expert. If you could break us out in the rooms, that would be great. How many people are there on the call now?
Is it 10 or 12 kind of thing? Let's do 2 small groups. I think that's a good idea, Susie. Yeah.
Yeah, you could do 3 even. I think that would be good, and then get some good discussion. Just talking about your challenges and prioritization, and then we'll come back and then debrief. So it'll just be a 5-minute breakout. Britt, we may want to stop recording for this moment.
Very interesting. It's good to collect in a small group like that, Susie.
Oh yeah, no, it's great. You think there's not that many people, but it's exactly the right number, right? To come together with 2-3 people, because you never get the opportunity to. I think people are still coming in. I'm not sure. I see. Is everybody back? Britt, do you see them all?
No, we have 1 or 2 others that are just on their way back.
See, people don't want to come back. It's very consistent, right? You get going on these
Rooms
topics.
will close though in 11 seconds, so we'll have them in a moment.
Oh yeah, it's all good. But yeah, it's one of these topics you could talk about for 20 minutes or 30 minutes with a team, right? Like, and explore.
Yeah. Totally.
So we'll just wait here. Okay, looks like all of our amigos are back. So how did it go out there? Does anybody want to share? Like, maybe Tara, you kind of came back smiling with Rhiannon and Stephanie, fast follower. Any takeaways that you want to share, or topics?
I feel like I've done so much talking. We had Jacqueline and Natalia were in our room. Jacqueline, I don't know if you want to share any observations. Jacqueline?
Sure, I can share some. I guess I'm realizing I didn't actually fully answer the questions. One of the challenges that I talked about is we have a fairly junior team, which means, and so I'm COO, my partner Catherine, she's the CEO founder. We find ourselves needing to jump into various parts of the business in a much deeper capacity than we would sometimes like, due to the nature of our team. We have a fantastic team. They just haven't, a lot of them, it's their first role outside of school. And so that's a challenge where we sometimes feel of ourselves getting spread thin. How do we prioritize them? First of all, I would say, one tactic is Kat and I very much divvy up what she dives into and what I dive into, and have clear responsibilities there to at least make sure we are not double dipping and both going in. And then in terms of prioritizing them, we've just gone through our strategic planning, and it always ties back to what are our Q1, Q2 objectives. And, if it's not on there, I shouldn't be spending my time with someone on something. Those are a couple quick tactics, I guess.
Mm-hmm. No, thanks for sharing that, Jacqueline. And I think that, it's an interesting point you bring up, is around a lot of people being new to the workforce, right? And this is a whole other challenge in terms of like how to, prioritize work. And I can give you an example that I think it was like a month or two ago, I got asked to do this session, and they said, Susie, do you want to do office hours for goal setting? And I was like, what? What do you want me to do? They're like, just take questions on like setting goals. And I couldn't, for me, I was like, okay, I was like happy to help. And it was this young company out of the valley, and it was, I don't know, let's say there's 50 people in this company, there's 2 founders, and then everyone else is new to the workforce. And they were setting goals for the first time in the organization. And what was happening is that the people who are new to work, they don't know. They don't know, what does it mean to have, what is a SMART goal really? They understand logically, they can read SMART, make it specific, measurable, etc. But what does it mean? It means we know we're both talking about the same thing, right? That's why we have these goals, so that we all can go back and have the same understanding. And we actually spent a full hour talking about this. And it goes back to thinking about when you think about prioritizing or getting, you're saying you're diving deeper than you'd like to in certain areas. I think this is probably a pretty common challenge, and especially when people are virtual, which causes additional complexity, as well as they're new to the workforce. It's all these different understandings. So yeah, I think that resonates with me for sure. And what I've been seeing. Anyways, just thought I'd share a little bit about that. What about our friend Stephanie? I see you nodding away. Well, how was your discussion?
I'm not sure we actually addressed what we were supposed to be addressing, but we were talking about how our businesses can make you feel like you're slightly losing your mind, and especially it's just in a week, it's not just that you're happy one day and then maybe happy, not happy the next day. It can literally happen within an hour, right? Extremely short cycles. And a lot of that has to do with, not having maybe clear goals set, and getting away from those goals, getting distracted by the shiny objects, and not really focusing in on these are the 3 priorities, and anything ancillary to that should just be eliminated, right? So I think it's just really being crystal clear about your objectives, making sure that you hit those objectives, and then eliminating the stuff that is the shiny objects that you're chasing, kind of thing. So
yeah, no, I love that. Those are really great insights. And I'm sure your peers also share those. And I'll talk a little bit about that after. Stephanie, I'll come back to you when I'm pitching. And then Rhiannon, am I saying your name correctly?
You are. I'm going to steal from a comment that Jacqueline made, because I thought it was very interesting take on the conversation, and that was that her priorities or the team's priorities change versus not priorities. The priorities for the day change, whether they're having an in-office, in-person day or a remote day, because they feel more productive remotely. So they may have objectives around getting focused work done, but in the office, the objective may be more focused on, and the priority may be more on, conversation, team building and workflow. So just how do you manage your differing priorities, and your large sort of strategic focus will stay the same, but your day-to-day focus and priorities may be very place derived.
That's actually very interesting and smart, like that you're managing like that, because, the office now has become an intentional, I guess, destination, because, I think we all know, I think it's something like 200 more people apply to jobs that are not in office, like explicitly, right? So they want to know, like everyone wants to know, okay, I really like, why do I need to go to the office? So if you're already doing that inherently thinking like, oh, we're in the office, like, let's alter our conversations, and like make sure that we're talking about team building and like solving process issues. Like that's very smart. And it's smart to talk about that, to say that you actually did it intentionally so that people know, like, hey, we're actually being really thoughtful about this. We're still focused on, the big game, but, today this is the part that we really want to get into because we have everyone together. Oh, very cool. So I think you guys have gotten into like deeper dimensions of priorities and how to actually execute them, like on the day-to-day. So that's very helpful insight. And I'm sure there's so many others, but we just, in the interest of time, I'll keep on going and we'll open up the discussion, and please keep on like just jumping in if you want to say something, just cut me off. Just be like, hey, I have a question, or I want to add. So okay, we heard about FOMO. So I made the worst acronym ever called FOMA. We had the fear of missing out, and now we have FOMA, which I'll walk you through. And, hopefully you can take a couple of bits and bytes away from this that you can use on your daily pursuits. So I'm going to walk through these, and, the first one that I'll go through is really around the F, right? The 3 big goals. So Stephanie, this is where I'm coming back to you. You're just like, man, there's so many goals. There's like a million things. And like, how, like, and what comes first and second, who's working on what, when. And we heard as well in Jacqueline's example too, splitting between the 2 founders. And if you think about how many things are actually going on and how much information we consume and how much you need to do when you're scaling an organization, it's a lot, right? Like it is just like, I always say you're on a bullet train. You're just going, right? And the thing is, no one can consume additional information. Like if you start, creating like 50 goals, no one will remember them. They won't even be able to remember 2. Like the closer you can get to one goal that you're working on, or one thing to keep people rallying around, the better you're off. And, like for me, I gave this example the other day when I was talking to, I think, Sarah about this too, is that I moved to tech from corporate. So I had like a long career kind of on the corporate side, working for big global organizations. And I switched to be like a chief people on the tech side. So I would say I'm a good systems thinker. Like I used to run teams, you'd have hundreds of people there across 14 countries with many different mandates, and everybody would have their goals. And I'd manage this in a matrix and get everybody to rally around it and like, let's go. So when I came to tech, I was like, okay, guys, all right, we have 5 people. We'll each get like, let's say even 7 goals. Like you go through, you're like, these are the 7 things we're going to focus on in each of your areas and kind of talk to them about. They're like, great. Within a couple of weeks of this, they're just like, what the heck? They're like, this is too many goals. And I'm like, really? And I'm like, okay. And we went back down. We went like, this is my own learning, right? And we went down to like 3 goals. I'm like, 2, and eventually to 1. You know what I mean? Because the thing that's happening is there's so much to do, and it just takes up your mental space, right? Like it's like you just don't have any capacity to think through all, how many goals someone wants me to do and all the things I need to do day to day, et cetera. So if you want to get in that real estate, my advice to you is 1, focus on 3 big goals. Make them like quarterly goals. They can be your annual goals, but start with like, that's what we're doing for the quarter. There's sort of 2 to 3 things, and you constantly talk to these. Anything more than that is way too hard to communicate, track, and rally towards. And this is especially important because if you're talking about this from an HR perspective, this cuts across the entire business that has lots of other goals. And then if you're talking about it from a company perspective, it's the same thing. Like people have all these other sub goals. So the more simple you keep this, the more success you are likely to have by keeping it very simple and narrow. because it allows people to execute on it. And then, you know, from an HR perspective, I always say that you don't have to have a sexy goal, right? People are like this fear of missing out. They want to talk about everything that's going on, like all the big hot topics that are going on in mental health and this and that, and going after different initiatives. And what's really great is to get a good foundation, right? So I always say, like, you know, that you need to support the goal to make money or make more money is the initial goal for HR, right? So that means like hiring the right people at the right time when they're needed, you know, being compliant, paying people correctly, and ultimately being accurate and complete in the work that you do. And this could actually translate to a lot of the other areas in the organization, is just doing all these basics right. So when you think about your big goals for a quarter, like, you know, your big goal is to make money and then to support it accurately and doing complete work, right? So just coming back to those basics. So, and, you know, in terms of keeping it simple, like the last point here, it's really about just making it so that the goals are clear and you can talk about them. That's it. So think about it like you make it so simple that your mom would understand it. She doesn't have anything to do with your dad, you know, with anything you're doing. If they could understand what you're doing, then you're at the right level of kind of communication within the organization to keep people focused. And then organizing your day-to-day. So the FOMA, F-O. So the O is really about, you know, okay, Susie, whatever, like we have a million things to do. What do I do with all the other stuff, right? And all that other stuff, you need to pace yourself on that business as usual tasks, because, you know, they can overrun your day. As you've said, like there's so many things that can change in priority during the day or through the week over week, right? And one of the hacks I had with my team is just saying, okay, we have 3 main goals of what we want to do this quarter. And I know you have stuff every week. Let's just get 2 things done this week and then 2 things done next week, the 2x2 tracking system. And this helps people just mentally compartmentalize, like, okay, this is this is doable. I can do 2 things this week and I could do 2 things next week and still stay focused on those big goals, right? So I'm still driving in the right direction. And then all these other things that need to get done and getting them done. And you can really celebrate that. If you track that, you'll have over 50 things to celebrate by the end of the year and say, like, you know what, that was kind of awesome. You know, you hit these one at a time and you really got a lot done. If I gave you a list of 100 things to do every 2 weeks, you would get nothing done, like absolutely nothing, because you would just spiral out of control, right? Or as would I. So this 2x2, I've tested this out and I found this as a helpful tool for myself and teams I've worked with. Managing up. So this one is a lot about managing up, and it's also about being more deliberate in your planning. So, you know, when we talk about the scale up environment, we talk about things being agile. We talk about, you know, just getting stuff done, right? And there's not a lot of focus on writing things down, right? And, you know, and it's kind of like, man, you know, like we don't have time for that. We have all these other things to do. We're moving too fast, you know, all of that. And I would actually argue that writing things down and thinking, like spend like 1 hour a week, an entire hour a week doing this, you know, and it's about managing up. It's about managing yourself and just managing what you're actually doing. So like if you actually, you know, pounded the brakes on a Sunday night and said, okay, I'm going, and I've done this myself for like 15 years, at least at work, where I've managed my boss. And I would show my peers like how I manage like what I'm doing in my updates. And they're like, oh my God, this is like so much work to write out just an email about all these things. And I was like, yeah, but I'm always aligned. Like I'm never out in left field when my boss is like, go this way, right? And also it helps your boss know how much you're actually doing. Because sometimes you're working like 24 hours a day, you're working on these 3 things that no one knows that are actually a major priority, but maybe they are for exactly what you're doing for, you know, either legally or HR finance or operationally, right? So taking the time to do this has so many benefits. So I like to use these 3 buckets. It's like people updates, you know, like what's going on with people, who's coming, who's going, what are we posting, where are we spending our money and time doing, and like who's on vacation, how are we covering that? Like that's real, like tactical, like let's get the people piece. And even anniversaries, like we're celebrating this important person or everybody who's up for 1 year anniversary. Like, what are we going to do? Like, and just talking about those pieces. It allows, like, for example, like if Sarah knew that Jacqueline or Stephanie was doing something, she could actually send a note to someone who's been there a year that's been very high impact to your business. See, and that doesn't take a lot of effort, but it requires thought and coordination, right? So yeah. So anyways, people updates, business as usual is just like, okay, like how many widgets did we process this week? How many did we sell? How many people did we reach out to? Like, where am I spending the time? right? If you look at your business as usual and you're like, whoa, last week I don't know what I did, right? Like I didn't reach out to anyone. Oh my God, but I spent all my time like fixing issues, right? Like that's important to talk about. And like, why did that happen? Do I need to fix the foundation of something to stop like spending so much time there? Or like, how can I actually, this week manage better to kind of like go back to, getting the widgets done, selling the widgets. And then the projects, how many projects are we working on, right? And again, you have to think about like when you see your project list, your own project list, like I would say, for me, I'm an executor. I could do like 20 projects at the same time. And like, just because of the way I grew up, but like, that doesn't mean that 20 projects could launch to an organization or managers that have so many things going on. Like the more projects you do, even if they help your area, might be making it confusing for everyone else because there's just too much change. So this is another one to watch, right? Like you might think you're like awesome because you're getting all these projects done, but it's just too much change. Like you just implode, right? Because again, this goes back to how much capacity do people have to get stuff done when there's so many things to focus on, right? So help build focus. And, in managing those expectations, when you write things down, the big 3 goals are visible, the 2x2 is visible, and you align all the time, right? And you can even ask yourself, like the whole burning house test, like if you want to adjust your list, you'd be like, does this make sense? Is this actually going to move the dial? Like, am I focusing on the right things, right? If I had to drop it all. So this is about managing up. I think this one's really important and never given enough airtime. Like when I think about like management talks with scaling environments. Align. So we're at the end at the FOMA, right? So like, so aligning the team and operations. And this one's one of the, I think, most important, and there's that expression that says like, if you want to go fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, go with a team. I probably messed that up, but you get it. Don't go, you want to go alone, you're going to go fast, but you won't go far type of thing. And you're never going to do anything yourself, right? You're always going to be doing it with your team. And you could look at 100 surveys out there to see what motivates employees. And I can tell you the top 2 things are always flexibility and development. Those are the top, no matter what. You can rack and stack this all day long. And, just like you yourself, you want things to be flexible. You want to be able to work where you work best. You want to be able to go to an appointment. You want to be able to work from home to do the things you need to do and get your work done. The development piece has traditionally been, I don't know, like I would think it would be cool if they sent me to Paris to study cybersecurity, like sign me up, right? Like those would be like cool development things that would happen, like kind of like, in the last, like, I don't know, 10, 15 years, you get sent on these conferences or go to Harvard and take a course, right? But when you think about how much development there is in a scale up, that's your value proposition of hiring someone. They're going to develop so much. Their focus is not going to be narrow. It'll be wide. So it's the chaos of it all, right? You need to take on all these different things, but it's like, again, intentionally thinking about, actively telling your team, like, look what we're doing. Look how much you've grown, look at like, Britt got to be involved in these 5 things in like 2 months. Like, that's amazing. Usually people are 10 years into their, career when they get to do that. Like, it's that type of messaging, right? So it's one, like, talking about what you're doing with your team, like, hey, like this is the 3 things we're doing. This is how far we are, number 1, 2, and 3. You can do this on a weekly basis, right? And then being like, hey, from a 2x2, let's go around the horn. Like, let's talk to everybody what you guys are doing. What's your 2 this week? What's your 2 planned for next week? And then just saying, like, guys, like, this is amazing. Like, this person's doing these new things. We have someone who usually works in sales doing ops this week. Like, that's pretty sweet, and we're able to do both, right? And recognize them. And this is time and energy and thoughtfulness that really get you, like, to really build the teams and also to just like talk about development. It's not about sending on courses. You're going to develop so much just in your role. So that's alignment, that's excitement, and that's the motivation you want in your teams to get you to success. But it's all based in clarity. Like, at the end, all the FOMA, all of the like doing less with less is about clarity. It's putting time into making things crystal clear for yourself and then for others, so that you can keep on focusing on getting 1 or 2 to 3 things done well, and then move on to the next ones. So that is my FOMA spotlight today, like, in terms of like giving you a simple, I think, practical set of like, line items that you can actually use and test out with your teams. Any questions or comments and things you'd like to talk about? I know everybody's so excited. They're just like in their minds being like, there's so many things.
The two, yeah.
Sorry.
I love the 2 + 2 or 2 × 2. That's really cool. And I think it was Jacqueline that mentioned earlier, or I can't remember who did, about avoiding the double dipping. Like, I think that that's really important as well for like leaders at different levels within an organization to make sure that they're aligned on what they've asked the rest of the team to do, so that you don't have a couple of folks off doing the exact same thing but doing it differently.
100%.
So I wanted to do a shout out on the double dipping check-in. I think that's great.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, and it's taking the time to align with your peers too. You're right. Like when you go and you manage up, it's like you manage sideways too. If you're getting big enough to talk about like where you might have kind of well, we used to call them horizontal issues, like issues that just cut across your initiatives. So where there might be friction. Great call out, Lynn. What else? Anything else come to mind? Stephanie, what do you think now? You keep on coming up to me on my my like headshots. It's like you're dead. You're getting all the questions.
It is for me. It's I love this. I think this is whenever I can take something and create a framework from which to work, it's always better for me because I'm no good without a cake batter recipe. I'm the queen of mixing the potion without having an actual, I love to experiment. I love to like throw stuff in, but I actually know that this is important because you need a recipe for this stuff. So my problem is when I set goals, it's like cutting off the head of the Hydra. It's a goal, but the sub goals get me. Like I'll be like, oh, okay, I need to get a really good CRM to get myself organized. Well, holy Hannah. The next thing I'm off thinking what I could do with that CRM and all the stuff that I could incorporate and that, oh, does it integrate the email marketing and does it do this? And I get really, really into like, what I should really be doing is getting the CRM and figuring out how to put names into it and how to like get organized. But I'm so like I'm just so crazy. Sorry.
Yeah, and sometimes like, especially like this isn't part of this discussion, but around systems are never the solution, right? It's always figuring it out before, like doing the gymnastics before you get it in the system will actually, really take you the extra mile, right? Because it's painful to figure that out in the system. Then you're constantly with this legacy setup. But no, that's very true, right? It is a Hydra head that gets cut off.
Yeah.
Gave me a visual. It's very good. So yeah.
Maybe I'll jump in. So Stephanie, I think it's funny you use that example of because in our breakout room, I was using the example of when we were talking about time management. I was saying right now, there's just too many, or I'm feeling like there are too many inputs. So email, text, WhatsApp, Slack, just everything's coming from all directions, which are supposed to help with efficiency, but it's actually, I would say, impacting outputs. So then I was trying to figure out, okay, now what AI assistant is going to help in the assessing my work patterns and, calendar and whatever else. So I am now reviewing all of the reviews, which I've gone down more rabbit holes and I've looked at more demos and I've looked at so I've done the exact same thing. I have not, to be clear, implemented any of them or improved my outputs or efficiency, but I feel like I'm now becoming an expert in all of the new AI personal assistants. So I understand the cake batter.
Oh, that's like going to be one of your next industry features by Sarah. That's really cool. And you know what's funny is that, of course, we all drown in emails and everything you just said. And I had a unique experience when I joined Clearco that they ran everything through Slack. And I got almost no email. Like I was used to getting 200 emails a day at every job for I don't even know how long. And then you go there and I'm like, are you guys sending email? I actually asked them, I was like, is anyone sending emails here? Like, am I just not like on lists or like what's going on? They're like, no. They're like, no, this is about efficiency. And they actually set up a culture of just using Slack and involving the people that need to be in the discussions and empowering all the levels within their organization to get things done. So it's very interesting, right? Like, and I'd never seen it ever work except for there. Because people like try everything, stand on your head, like try to get this done, stop doing this, get rid of meetings, do whatever, right? There's so many things you can try, but they're like, as a use case, it would be interesting to continually study that. But I honestly think it came from like the CEO there, like really being passionate about empowering each person in the organization and just saying like, figure it out today, like emails and meeting, even they didn't have meetings, like they would just have meetings to solve problems and just like a weekly kind of touch point. So it is possible, but it's unique, right? Like most of us live in the, in
So like Susie, my question would be like, don't you just get like sort of overwhelmed with the Slack messages as you would have been with the email messages? How was that different for you?
They basically, like, I think they just said like, only send things when you need to. That's it. And they started it from the beginning. So I'm not slacking, you, Lynn, and being like, hey, Lynn, what's up? Like Slack, you know what I mean? And hey guys, here's a joke about managers and how you run manager. Like, no, like that, maybe they do it a bit, but not really. Their Slack was like, hey, Susie, we need to like get this contract out today. Can you help us do that? And copies 2 other people and one person jumps in. Yep. Got it. Me, got it, done. And it was that whole, and I think it worked really well because 2 things, like 1, they set it up that way. And 2, there was a younger demographic that loved to work autonomously. And it fed into that, right? That they wanted to work asynchronously and just get stuff done. And they felt good about being empowered to do those things. And what a lot of organizations fall into, as I'm sure most of you have seen, is that strong nucleus, right? Where there's a nucleus of 4 people that do everything. And then you keep on trying to spread out that nucleus. And what they did was the opposite. They just said like, yeah, we hired these people, like let them do their job. And people get really empowered from that, like having that meaningful impact. So anyways, it was a fascinating thing because I'm with Sarah. 99% of my life has been overrun by all these things and trying to figure out like, how do I avoid this, right? Or, how do I not get CC'd on everything or, just anything to drive efficiency in that area.
Or then I go back to respond and I can't remember like where I'm supposed to respond or so anyway.
I know it is seriously a challenge. And I'm going to move on just because we're in our last 10 minutes and I'll do the speed round, which I don't think I need too much time here, but I'll leave a couple of minutes for questions. But I think something that's interesting is engagement surveys, right? And I think we all know what an engagement survey is. And I looked up a little bit of stats on this and, 3/4 of companies run annual engagement surveys. And I think the interesting thing to look, if you're following ESG, like environmental, social, and governance, like kind of all the legislation around these and what they're going to be mandating, they're going to be mandating like from the S piece, which includes all people, right, interactions throughout, but like from a HR perspective, just whether or not you have an engagement survey, which I would say is like an insanely low bar, but it's there. Like it's going to be required that every company have an engagement survey if they don't already. So I think that's interesting in itself, and we'll see how that continues to evolve. And the fall is typically a popular time because it doesn't really, collide with other important business events like year end, et cetera. And I've been doing these for years, and I've come across kind of a new movement in this space, where traditional surveys have focused on what employees say. So I like to use the example, like, do you see yourself here in 2 years? This is a classic employee engagement question, right? And, what the science has told us is that 60% of traditional answers on these surveys don't align to how employees feel. So they're telling you one thing, but they're feeling something else. And this brings into like kind of, into focus truth sayers, which is a company, and there's a whole sector of this, of neurotech, right, that really tries to explain, the difference between what someone tells you versus how they actually feel about something. And I kind of brought these little graphs to show you like what this type of engagement survey will provide you and just how it works. So this is the traditional one. Like, you have your normal engagement survey that we've all done, right? Like, hey, Susie, do you see yourself here in 2 years? Well, of course, this is saying 0%, like this is kind of like you're 70 something percent, which, yeah, is a fun fact. In Canada, everybody answers between 70 to 80 on a fence sitting type of answer, we'll say they're 70 to 80% engaged on average. But then how do I really feel? I'm like, woof, like this is like in the 0 zone. Like I told you, I feel like I'll be here, but I actually, I don't think so. So you can see there's a huge spread. Like the blue is basically like what I told you. This is how I feel, where I am aligned in a lot of ways here with what I said, but then there's areas that I'm not, right? So this is the value of doing these new types of engagement surveys. So they actually take you to the next level. So Aon, who is like kind of a forefather, I think most of you know Aon, in engagement survey space, they've actually adopted this as their back office, like for neurotech, and to understand. And what they do is they've basically built algorithms to look at your response time. So depending on how long it takes you to agree or disagree with a sentiment, it will tell you the likeliness that you're aligned with it or not. So this is kind of like just how it works. And the other piece that is happening in engagement surveys is they're really getting more accessible. So I've seen this, and it's really interesting, like as I continue to work and, and I know all these things are important, but the amount of time spent speaking about like the need for more accessibility is here, right? And I feel like it's really amazing, like in the example of this tool, and I think others like it, like there's the AI translation. So you can have like, do your survey in any language. Like this used to be a major issue from an HR perspective, like just to get it in French, but now you can do it in any language, right? And, neurodiversity toolbar, right? Like an audio version, extended time if you need it, etc. So I think this is an interesting take. Like it all makes sense, but it's very new, and it makes sense to modernize how we survey people. And in the sense of this type of survey, like I've dug deep into this, and I find it fascinating because you could use it from an employee perspective and you can use it from a commercial perspective. So if you, in the case of Truthsayers, the example I'm using here, they actually started their business with perfumes, like because perfume makers in Europe were trying to figure out, like, do people really like these perfumes? And they couldn't figure it out, because they'd be like, yeah, I like it or whatever. And they did the same thing. Like they asked them the questions and saw whether or not they truly felt like they liked the different perfumes, and it informed how they actually formulated the perfumes going forward for sale. And, the other example that I saw them go through myself was in Pedigree about dog food. The same thing, like really trying to improve. And Pedigree uses this type of surveying to understand if their owners, are having good experiences with their food or if they should shift in any way, along with many of these other ones. So anyways, I just thought I'd do a little industry spotlight on this because this is something that I've been working on. It's pretty cool. I've seen like the differences myself in survey outcomes where you see what people have said versus how they feel, and where it is really different. And it requires some focus groups or some more discussion. And a lot of times where you see the differences, it's, maybe someone's telling you they want to focus on development from an engagement survey, but what's coming out is they really want clarity in their job. I've seen this many times. It's that non-sexy stuff because, time and time again, like from an engagement perspective, what you learn is people just want the basics. They want to know what they're supposed to be doing, know how they're measured on it, and feel like they're making an impact. And that's the stuff that gets you disengaged. It's not going to a conference, although that would be super cool. But like those three are the ones that really, really get you. So this type of decoding, I think, is going to continue to be more prominent. And these guys are already at, I think it was 500 billion data points in terms of being able to have comparables and to test out this timing technology. So I don't know if you have any questions, but that was kind of my little sneaky, quick industry focus in the last few minutes there. Let me see. I'll stop sharing. I think, was there someone in the chat? Oh, no. It was just mine telling me a note. So that's it for today. Any questions or comments from the group?
Susie, that was, I'll just say that was really useful information. I did want to ask one question about the 2x2 tracking. So,
Yeah.
could you give like an example or two of something like an achievable, like the 2x2 that you'd identify, right? So it'd be like something more significant, I guess, rather than, because how we have like lists of little smaller things that we're doing, but it would just be like a bigger thing, like
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know, newsletter.
Yeah, for you, like in a marketing perspective, like, yeah.
Yeah.
Generally what I've done actually for the 2x2, I developed this like Excel template. So when we talk about getting like fancy systems, it's true. They could probably do this better. But if you do this the traditional way, it'd be like, okay, like list the 2 things that you're working on. You know what I mean? Like maybe you have, you're doing this series, for example, and you're trying to get speakers. So that becomes a project that's on your list, right? And you can say, here's what I did last week on this. And then here's what I have planned for this week. Right. And then you can say in process, not started, in process, complete, that type of thing.
Yep.
And then what do I need from you? That's like a typical, Susy manager template that makes it quick, and it makes you think about it too. Like you give that to your team, then they'll be like, okay, like here's the list of things that Tara thinks I'm working on. Right. And then, they go through like, okay, I was supposed to be helping her do these. Oh God, like I haven't set up I haven't promoted it. I haven't done these are different things. And you can see where they need your help. And it also helps you see where they're at, right? Like, did they realize they needed your help? So a lot of this new to work discussion as well, you could be like, oh, I told them to do this, but wait a minute, they're missing 4 steps, but they don't even know. I have to, this is an opportunity to coach. So that's the other thing with a tool like that, is it one, helps you move the things in the right direction, and also helps you help your employees on your team, because it drives that discussion that otherwise they wouldn't even know, sometimes what steps are necessary to get something done. Does that help, Tara? Is that a good enough example?
Yeah, no, great answer. And I loved your advice around managing up in 3 categories too, because during my time at a startup, I had kind of had a similar approach, but I feel like I had 15 categories of things that I wanted to. So I like the 3 buckets. So I hope other people will find that useful, because I find that's a clear-cut way of dividing up what you want to share in advance, and then you can talk through with the points if they want to get into.
Okay, thanks, Tara. No, I appreciate that. And then like Katie, I haven't talked to you yet over there from Blue Line Labs. What are you thinking out there?
Yeah, sorry, I've got my kids are home right now and they're doing a rendition of Raining Tacos. So you might get that in the background.
That's funny.
Yeah, no, this has been really helpful. We're currently going through a period of kind of just a little bit of a readjustment and reprioritizing and focusing, and doing less with less is very much on topic for us right now. And, trying to rein in this shiny object syndrome of startups. And, it kind of for us comes down to like, what's the most important thing that needs to happen right now? And then how do we get there? So identifying that problem, and then what skills or what holes do we need to plug in order to get to that problem and solve it? So this has been, the structure of this workshop's been really helpful for us.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And like something else just to add, like if you're prioritizing right now and you have a big list, you can always use like effort versus impact, right? Like low effort, as like, it's a 2x2, right? So it's like low effort, high effort, low impact, high impact. So you want to be in the low effort, high impact. Those are like the money projects. Those are like, oh my God, like, let's do these. These are like super high impact. It's not as much effort. The high effort, high impact are strategic plays that suck up your time and will be longer. You know what I mean? So, but you need to look at that. Like I'm actually working on this with another company right now. It's like, you need to look at that and see like, is this realistic? Like if you have everything plotted for high effort, high impact, you might just die. Right? Of collapse, right? Like you're just like, well, I can't do this. Like everything is high effort and high impact, right? You also need the energy of the low effort, high impact, right? Or even low impact to fuel like success and progress, right? To move forward, right? So anyways, just if it helps you as you're going through that, it's a simple way to look at it, but it'll show you visually what you're doing or what you're up against.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for that advice.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Good luck with the raining tacos.
Thank you.
Tacos, no.
Yeah.
Oh.
We all know it. We all know it.
It's a wonderful song. Yeah,
I think it's a great song. Well, listen, Susy, I don't know if we had any final questions, but just really want to sincerely thank you for your time. Your time is very valuable, and you have incredible insights, and it was such a pleasure to get your thoughts today, and the thought that you put into this presentation, and the structure, and having some space to connect with each other on that. So We have recorded this and we will upload this to our YouTube channel. So please share this with your teams and anyone you think would enjoy it. And we will share on our social media channels as well. So thank you, Susie. And please join us on September 12th. We'll have Eleanor Beaton. So she's the founder of Sapphire Media, an education and coaching company for women entrepreneurs. And she will be talking about building your leadership brand. So a nice follow-up to this session. And we always love to hear your feedback. So at any point, please reach out, and questions and comments are always welcome. And we really appreciate your participation today. Thank you for being part of the Sandpiper mission. And I hope everybody has a nice summer evening and will enjoy a little rest and relaxation at the end of the workday. Maybe some music. Okay. Thanks again, Susie.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. Bye, Sandpiper friends. Good luck.
Friends
Stay in
forever.
touch. Yeah, for sure. Bye-bye.